Hi everyone, welcome to another AI conversation. I'm joined today by Amy Obinguar, who probably needs no introduction. But hi Amy, welcome to the show. Happy to have you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm really grateful actually to be part of this. I guess we've been, talking about this before and now we're here. Yeah.
Yeah. So Amy, you're probably the most famous person on LinkedIn as far as I don't know, ano bang category, up and coming or young data and AI talent. So maybe for the one or two people who don't know who you are, can you give a brief background of yourself and let's, start talking about stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm Arvelin. I think I've been posting a lot on social media like LinkedIn and even Facebook. So I think I started mostly from a background of physics. And then from there I get to transition to like going to data world because I feel like my background wasn't really like that, the gap wasn't really like that big that I could jump. But eventually that led me to like exploring the world of data and then eventually go to AI at some point. So I went to different companies from corporate and then now doing something on the startup side because I guess the young ones kind of like feel more, we're pretty okay with doing some risk, especially in the startup world. So yeah, I think that's pretty much about me.
I'm pleasantly surprised kasi nga, honestly, during my time, which is ages ago, doing startups were seen as very very kumbaga bawal, no, parang or the saying is, oh, if you don't qualify for a job, maybe you can start a business, parang ganun yung hierarchy, no? It's a weird thing, parang everyone wants a job first, and then if you can't hack it, then maybe you can just, you know buy a show my franchise or something. Parang ganun yung trato, which I feel is a symptom of a broader problem, which maybe we can talk about later, like how lackluster the startup ecosystem in the Philippines. But that's my view, ah. Parang I'm really not impressed,
Mhm.
no. I know a few startups, pero many of these startups aren't really startups, if you ask me, or many founders don't really act like founders. They act more like employees of their investors. Sorry, ah.
Yes, yeah.
So hugot ko rin eh. But no, it's not enough about what I think. What do you think? So what inspired you to get started? And then maybe so small segue. I do notice a lot of physics majors getting into data science. So is that kind of the norm now if you're taking up physics? Is the natural way of things to get into data science, data engineering, data anything?
I guess when I got into startups, the only thing that I did was like I get to the corporate world. And then as a Gen Z, I feel like the it's like a room wherein you don't have any windows. That's how I think about corporate. I don't know if for others, but probably as a young Gen Z, we feel like we wanted to explore more with things. And I guess startup is the one. And on the other side, startup is not like an easy thing to do because again, there's a lot of more like up and downs, like compared to corporate where you can have like more stable experience, like you get this and so on. I think the startups kind of like inspired me because I was able to like do many things in one probably like place. Like I can do different designing, engineering, and then eventually like go to marketing in one place. So I kind of like I see that I can learn as much as I can. And
Did your
then I
can I
guess
ask, was that contention in your family? Because that's always also for me, another thing most startups founders encounter is resistance from the family, either from your parents, na, "Ano what are you doing with your life?" or relationships. Like I know when I quit my job, which is medyo, I'm a late bloomer there, and I was already in my late 30s. My fiance, who would then be my wife, was saying, "Why are you quitting your job just as we were getting married?" Parang ganun ang dating. So in your case, was that ever a problem, or was that comfortable for you in your family?
actually at first there was like a resistance. I guess also on my friends or like a circle of people, like they know how stable it is in corporate. but I chose the other way around, which is yeah, the up and downs of startup. But I eventually they kind of like get that this is what I want to do, and I'm kind of like a person that if I want to do something, I really want to do it, like even if you don't want it. So I guess that's more like being I guess courageous on some point to like go beyond the ideally what people think about it.
So did you get let's go back to being a physics major and getting into data. Did you feel that that's an ideal background to get into some data work? Of course, there are lots of non-physics people. Like I'm not a physics major, but I do notice there's a high, I don't know, occurrence of BS physics tapos nag-data science, no? Even some of the legendary data scientists in the Philippines are actually physics people, no? So was that normal for you?
I guess it wasn't really like it's more like it's like a domino effect wherein I've seen some role models in the data science world that came from that kind of background, and then eventually as young Gen Z we feel like okay, our program because like before I joined the program, physics, I had no any like career to go. Like I don't know if it was like teaching because a lot of people before think it when you're like a best physics student or when you graduated at that program, you can only like do teaching and that's pretty much. But because of the role models like a lot of people we know in the industry, they're like from BS physics and eventually they're very like active in a lot of
You've
things.
met naman them, 'di ba? Sina
Yeah.
Dr. Reyna Reyes, sina
Yes.
Dr. Ligara. I wonder if si Monterola ba is a physicist? I don't remember, but
I
of
I
course,
think yes,
of
yes,
course
sir.
you know si Sherwin Pelayo. Siyempre, let's name drop the legends, no? Do you know Xavier Puspos?
Yes,
Yun,
yes.
isa pang physicist yun. Yeah, interesting, no? Okay, sige, going
Yeah.
back. So your physics, no career, quote unquote. So not enough jobs looking for black holes and planets. No,
Yes.
just kidding. But anyway,
Yes.
and so then why data sa dami ng ibang bagay? Why data in the first place?
I feel like when you like invest physics, we do already like the data because like we do experiments and at some point we do like analysis from the data we found on the experiments. I guess it's kind of like similar to how we think about data science. Like we do have this kind of data and then from there we try to make more like analysis wherein people needs. So I guess it's pretty much an easy path for a physics student because you don't have to go to like let's say if you're like aside from data science would be like web development. It's a very big jump because you have to learn a lot of things like programming languages to like build a website. But in data science it's more like if you know how much you can to understand like a certain problem and then the data itself, then I guess that's the pretty way to go. But I guess it's a I guess the role models really helps to really go to data. Because I feel like that's it's a really good point. My role model when I started was Dr. Reina. So I actually watched her first webinar during the pandemic. And then from there I went to like going to data because she did she was able to like become one as a data scientist and I think she's working with Miss Michelle, so I think
Although
from there I
she did
get
the
to
physics stuff first, 'di ba? Parang she
yes,
was part of that paper that was that gravity waves or something, basta they were able to
yes,
validate. So nag-physics talaga siya like a legend, no? And actually I think she's also teaching right now, if I'm not mistaken. She came
yes.
back. Okay. Ikaw, you're not much of you're not much into teaching, or is that something you'd like to do eventually?
I guess to teach like a physics, subjects on campus, I don't think that's kind of like my forte. But if it's like about AI or something, I guess I could help. But I haven't think about teaching at this time because I feel like there's need to like learn as a like first because when you like become a professor, it's like the student sees you like very like kind of like legends are like Dr. Reina. So I guess that's something that makes it really more like interesting. And yeah.
So sige. So you physics, took up data science. How did you start? Did you eventually land the job first, or did you go straight into startup territory?
I think I was actually doing projects before the pandemic. So I was trying to build like my knowledge in AI, because again in the physics world we don't study about programming, Python, or like AI machine learning. Maybe a little, but not like a part of our program. So we had to like learn, I guess, from scratch. And then I guess it's I started there like just building projects around it. And then I actually tried working on corporate, because when you like starting new like in the industry, the first place you go to is like corporate, just to
Yeah.
get more like grasp of the experience. So I guess started from there. Eventually, it was like a corporate, but I wasn't expected that they would offer me like a senior level position already, because of the projects that I've done
Wow.
in
Okay.
the past. Yeah, yes. Actually, I started as intern from a startup company, which is Essequa Labs. So I started there as an intern, and then
Did you take
eventually,
the
during
Escuelabs
along
boot
the
camp, or were you just an intern in Escuelabs?
well, what happened was I wasn't able to pass the I think data analyst or data scientist pathway for the boot camp. So what they did was they offered me an internship and instead. So that's what's happened. Like how I get into
Okay.
Escuela Labs.
You were applying for the program, and they
And
said mag-intern na lang.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So and then eventually I went to my first corporate, which unexpected, because I didn't know that I was able to like send a lot of CV, or like resume on LinkedIn, like, and then I just didn't know like any company that will respond. And fortunately there's one, which is the Accenture. So I started there, and I was shocked with the offer that they had, because they offered me with a senior level position when I just got into an internship, and then just the projects at hand. So I guess it's like 20 the times, pretty young. And then from there I get to started with the corporate world as much as I can. You're muted, sir. I think you're muted, sir.
So how long did you stay in that corporate gig? And
Yeah.
how long before you got the epiphany, no, na it's time to go, no? It's time to do the startup thing finally. Because I'm very impressed na parang it was very deliberate for you. Let's get an internship, get a good job, and then pero sabi mo you're not gonna do that forever, no? So how did that come about?
I think I almost like stayed there for 2 years almost, and then even if I really want to like leave the company for some reason, that I feel like corporate is not for me. I don't know if like I had that feeling, but a lot of times that I feel like I guess it's not a place for me, because the growth I can find the growth in the corporate world, but not it's just like my own experience. But and then eventually when I get to like startup, every time like you get to like see how like founders really like work up, and especially how starting out was really challenging. And then like I get to see like it's more like I think interesting, because
Mm-hmm.
like I always like wants to like go anywhere else, and then like find myself like doing something new. Because in the corporate I was doing all the job that I like is in my job requirement. And then in startup it's something that go beyond your job requirement, so there's something new to do. So I guess that's pretty much like why I actually wanted to like leave now to the corporate the time. So yeah, that's what happened. And then when I get to startup, it was like not really easy, because when you're like an AI engineer, and then like you wanted to go to like a CTO level, it was really hard actually. It was like a big jump. as
What,
well.
what's the
So
main for you kasi I can understand exactly what you're saying. Yun nga, I'm very impressed that you came to that realization and acted on it very early. I had the same realization actually in my case. I wasn't in corporate. I was doing sort of a commission-based job. Uh, and then I was forced to take a job in my view kasi yun na nga business cycles na up and down. But I really knew that I didn't like employment from the get-go. Pero for some strange reason, I ended up being an employee for more than a decade before deciding na, almost 2 decades actually, before deciding na finally time to get into business. So ang layo ng arc ko. Sa'yo, sa simula, you did that and then you realized it's not for you and then you left. So what was that key insight and the big difference? You said AI engineer and CTO. What's the big parang mindset change?
yes, actually, I guess with AI engineers, like you build AI models, you have a data that you're using, but when you're like into the startup, they don't have any yet data. So
Yep.
like the thing that I've seen is that when you go to startups and you want to like go to C-level positions, like or like to be like a founder, they were like you had to really learn like for example, I do know like full stack like web and like web, mobile. It's like you had to really like learn new something outside of the things that you know of, which is the AI. Because AI is just part of like a certain workflow in early stage startup. And sometimes they're not priority. They're not priority for them. So I guess it's something that I realized that when you go to like startups, there was so much to learn. It's like you will see that you only need this little much. And then when you go to there, it's like, okay, you need to more like learn more about it. So yeah, that's kind of like a realization to me when I get into like the startup world.
Okay. So sige, in a way, this is like the biography of Amy Obinguar. No? Maganda to. So we're now in startup land. Did you have to go through many startups first, or was your first startup gig kind of the thing, and then you stayed there until recently?
Yes. Actually, before I left corporate world, I had a lot of offers before like to go to startup, like a CTO. But the one thing that I think of is like I have to find a problem that kind of like resonate with my own experience because I feel like I cannot stay for like a long years for something that I'm not like really like really, I don't think I'm related it. So, I had to look for it a lot of times with the startups, just finding something that could, work for me. And then I found that there's one. And then that's my previous startup. And then eventually like I really focus on it more full time. So I really like venture like a lot about investments, which something that I didn't know like when I was in corporate because I wasn't doing those things, especially like how to pitch with investors and or like doing live demo or and so on. Like you really like talk with a lot of people, so there was like something new that tickle in my mind that okay, this is really like something I want to do, even if it doesn't make sense to like preach what's like business model. I don't know what are those things, but eventually I kind of like learn as you really go. So those are the things actually.
Yeah, so being a CTO, kasi minsan CTO is confused for CIO, which is more of a corporate job, no? You've done a CTO job, fractional CTO job. In your view, what does a CTO actually do? Because funny enough, no, I called myself a CTO long before I called myself the CEO of a company. Although effectively I was doing both. Ngayon I say CEO and CTO para just to remove confusion. Pero I felt my role was really technology first. No? But in your case, what was the CTO gig for you?
I guess whenever like I talk to startups, the only problem they had was like it's hard for them to like talk with the developers. Like yes, they do have their own product managers, but like when they like think about how to like deliver like let's say the apps, because of course they do like outsourcing at the very first, because I guess that's the easiest path for startups to go if you don't have any CTO. But there was like a problem to go move forward with it. So I guess TTO is more like like you also translate what the non-technical founders would say in a certain like app or what they do need, and then eventually like you talk with the developers in some ways like, okay, this is something that we should do, and features and so on, and then eventually like you also think about the business that they're doing. So it's more like you're like a product manager at some point, but you also do like a business stuff around it. So I guess it's more like you do the technology first and then have the people, and then make sure that the process is there, because that's something that as a fractional CTO sometimes wala siya
Mhm.
with certain startup, or even the established one they do have, but like they just need to scale up the team they have. Like for example, they have like 10 people and then they want to go with 100. So like it's so hard to do that if you don't like if you don't have any CTO at your hand. So I guess that's something that I see now with a lot of fractional CTO also on the industry. I don't know that they existed before I asked some questions about it, and then eventually see that okay, there's one people or there's more people actually doing it. And it wasn't like about something, because at first I thought that you can't do fractional for a C-level position, but now it's real.
I think it's easier to be a fractional CTO than to be a fractional CEO. Although yun nga some of the most famous CEOs we know, they run more than one company. I don't know how they can do it. Um, Even yung mga involvements ko, I'm more hands-on with at least one, no? But it's hard to be hands-on with all. Pero sa CTO ata, it's possible because you can, in a way, you can divide your attention, no, between certain tasks. Very task oriented. Do you agree? Is it really task oriented, or uh is there also a fair amount of people management in it?
I think it depends on the startups, but I guess I have one like that's really established. So they really have that. They really the one take care of the people management.
Mm-hmm.
So I mostly do the technology part. So I guess it's pretty much depends on where you go to like startups.
Yeah.
And then I guess it's something that as a fractional CTO you can have like many hours on a week because you're a fractional, not the full time. So I guess the people management, it depends, but the way they build or scale up their technology teams, I guess that's something that you really do. And I think it's task oriented, because like you talk to like the product managers and then you talk to devs. So it was like time based rather than like you have to go there like any hours, because you like compared to CEO, it was really more manageable to become like a fractional CTO and yeah, CTO itself.
Yeah. Another thing that I wanted to ask you, obviously, and maybe later as we segue into your life in social media, no? Did you feel any form of ageism, alam mo yun, yung parang age discrimination? Because reason why I'm asking is I used to get that a lot, no? Parang who are you? What do you know? How long have you been working? Parang ganyan. It's very status centric. But because I also started in a very status centric industry, which is finance and banking, no? There it's all about credentials and age, no? But I don't know if, because I can't relate to being in a startup until much later in my life. And by then, I was the aged person by then. Everyone's younger. Pero in your case, you're the up and coming, bright young star. How did you feel any form of age discrimination as you were going through it?
I guess in the corporate, yes. Because you were talking to like juniors like 10 years older than you. So there was like some point that they asked like, you look young, how old are you? Like for example, like that. And then eventually I just segue the conversation, because I feel like when I disclose my age, it somehow like would think that they wouldn't respect you because you're too young, like so that is something. So that's one thing that I realized back then. And then when I go to startups, I see a lot of founders that's like way older than me. So there was like a few people that's like similar to my age, but mostly they're like older. So I think it's something that something like imposter syndrome is like starting to like a founder on a startups. It feels like you're new in the space, and somehow you feel like the feeling of imposter syndrome, like you feel like you're a fraud because you go here and then you don't know have like, and so on. When I get to like CTO level, I feel like there's a lot of things for me to learn. Like other people already know like how to even build full stack or like UA. I just learned those when I get to the startup, just learning it as I go. So there's like a lot of things that, you know, feeling of that. But somehow I realize it's just probably like me thinking about that, but they don't think about that on the other side. So yeah, I guess that's something that probably other people would kind of relate to.
Do you consider yourself a self-taught developer, or did you have to take like formal lessons? Because in physics there is a little bit of coding there, no, but it's not like computer science where that's a big chunk of the curriculum. So do you consider yourself more of a formally trained or self-taught kind of dev?
I guess I in a classroom when I get into like physics, I always like really like behind from the class. So I guess my kind of learning wasn't really like in a formal setup because I feel like there's a lot of competition around you and you don't know, like you always think about who like how to excel. But in in learning computers, science or even like the IT itself, you don't feel like you have to compete with other people because everyone has like a different way of stacks because you guys have like your own niche. So eventually I realized that I can do things like learning it. So yeah, I guess the self-taught might be, good term to it. And then from there, I feel like during the pandemic, it was really great because no one's actually seeing your what
Yep.
you do every day. They're not gonna ask you like what you did today or like this there was no metrics to like or grades when you're learning like programming. It's just basically you doing an output stuff like do a certain projects and then from there that's your KPI already. Like that's something that I see that I cannot do formal training. Maybe like the reason why I think doing boot camps isn't my part of T
But you
because I guess
tried
it's like
for
a
SQL
formal,
Labs, right? That was a boot camp.
yeah, yeah, and then didn't pass on it.
Hindi ka talaga pang bootcamp, in other words. So, okay. The reason I'm asking is, well, I consider myself a self-taught developer. Although I was coding at a very young age for fun, no? My dad bought me a home computer. This is long before itong mga modern languages. No? I was coding in BASIC. I was building games in BASIC when I was very young. But I never thought, it never occurred to me to take it up in school. No? Strangely enough. Parang computer science was not even on the list. And then later, kumbaga after being a kid and then nothing, and then midstream through my first few jobs, kasi I started out in a non-employed setup, then became an employee. During that employment, I rediscovered coding myself, no? First through Microsoft Visual Basic, and then later on, yeah, sunod-sunod na. Visual Basic, led to Access, led to SQL, led to, yan, dire-diretso na. And then, even the web development stuff, I taught that myself, no? Only because I just wanted to come up with a very simple HTML website. And then yun na, naging gateway drug na siya to JavaScript. And then yung mga Python, mga R came later. I even had a brief time using SAS, no? I think that was probably the only time I was actually taught to code in my job, no? We were enrolled in a class for SAS kasi you need that for data analysis. Nowadays you don't need it anymore, but back in the day that was the class. No? Anyway, back to my question. The reason why I'm asking about being self-taught is I find that, and tell me if you disagree, pero I've met enough developers and non-developers to tell that there is a cultural gap between them. Okay? So yung mga non-developers, they have this fear of code, even though they don't express it. Parang they fear technical stuff. And we say technical, it's just the coding. Kasi marami naman technical knowledge na non-coding, for example. So you can be a technical, expert in, let's say, risk management, but you would not necessarily write code for that. So that's a very interesting gap. And then on the dev sides, which probably are majority formally trained, kaya nga I want to draw a distinction between self-taught and trained. There's this, sorry to say it, inability to relate to a business problem, no? Parang, oh yeah, fine, I can code object-oriented, functional, for loops, if then, whatever, arrays, lists. So you know that stuff. But if I say, hey, look, I have a problem with customer attrition, what can you do about that? And that's blank agad. And that's what necessitates, probably, as you said, the CTO job. But I find that a number of CTOs are actually self-taught. So parang ganun na nangyari. You have the non-devs and the hardcore devs. And it's a self-taught devs who are actually speaking both languages, not being taught. So I don't know. Does that resonate with you? Is that something that you can agree with or disagree with, by the way? Feel free.
Actually, I agree because I have been talking to a lot of people in the community, and I've seen like a gap with the technical people. Like sometimes they don't really go to like, let's say, management, level, because they feel like they have to talk with a lot of people, talk about business, and that's something that scares technical people. Like they don't want to do like, Excel sheets, like computing any like and so on. And I feel like that's really true because as a non-technical, it somehow like relates to the idea that we're not trained, so we don't know really much that data structure is. We just learn it along the way of self-learning. So I guess I agree with the gap, but eventually, like, I guess when you have like a non-technical background, it's so easy to actually relate to like the stakeholders. Like they get to see that, okay, you kind of like understand where we're coming from, not like coming from a technical at first. So I guess yeah, it's an advantage, and at the same time somehow like can stand out because of that skill to actually relate to people at the very first time to have them.
Yeah, and that's also amazing if you ask me, because where can you find an occupation where lack of formal training is actually an advantage? Isn't that mind blowing? Which actually, I'll make a slight segue, because we haven't been talking about AI, no? So we're talking about done, I don't know, literally probably almost 100 events this year. Na mostly ako lang naman ang ini-invite. I don't host. Maybe with the exception of the AI meetups. No? I've done a couple of those, but the rest are just invitations. So I've had the opportunity to talk to quite a number of industries. And again, this is not a scientific study by any means, no, but I can group them neatly into three buckets. So the ones who are positive, neutral, and negative about AI. And again, this is a generalization. Those who are positive, software developers, you just use it. I was in the Babel conference in Whitespace Makati a couple of months ago. You were the host, right? No, that was DevCon pala. Iba pala yun. So the Babel was mga graphic designers. They completely love it. Architects love it. Kasi they can use it to rapidly template, generative AI, I meant, rapidly template stuff for clients. So yun yung mga positives, which was a surprise for me. Because I would have thought the graphics people would be threatened by, apps like Midjourney, Stable Diffusion. Apparently not, no? At least the ones I met there. Then the neutral, ito yung matatawa ka rito. Uh, Data scientists are neutral. So they're not like rah 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 all about AI. In fact, some of them can be quite negative about it, no? But not too negative. Pero so I would say neutral. BPOs are neutral, which was a good thing, because when I started working closely with IBPAP, I thought it's going to be completely negative. AI is going to steal our jobs. May ganun, pero not too much. And then my home industry before, banking, was also quite neutral. They saw the risks, they know the advantages, but they're not lining up to sign up just yet, no. But they're not nega. Which brings me to the nega. I don't know if I can list all of them, pero certainly medical doctors, they don't like it.
Oh.
Lawyers, they hate it. Of course, teachers, no? I talk a lot with mga educators. I'm sure you know a number of them. Rabidly negative about it. Copywriters. I attended the Pen Congress in the CCP. Oh my God. Kung kulang na lang, ipapulis nila yung, yung AI. Because number one, they find it an atrocity that an automated algorithm can write stuff. And second, their creative writing classes are collapsing because students are just shredding it with chat GPT stuff. So they don't know how to handle it. Cyber, although I've had a love-hate relationship with that group, to be honest. But generally, cyber people are kind of negative. Oh, yeah, it's going to compromise everything, blah, blah, blah. If I sum it up, I must have missed one or two there, though. Pero the ones who seem to be kind of positive and maybe to a certain extent neutral are jobs that are very output driven. Kumbaga, I don't care who you are, what you study, just give me this. Parang ganun, di ba? Graphic artists, you know, the dev community, obviously, some data scientists. But the ones who are negative, oddly enough, they seem to be occupations that have a lot of credentialism needed. Parang, oh, you gotta have this MD, PhD, blah, 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 A, B, C, D, E, F, G, alphabet soup. Or they need certificates here, certificates there. You're a Palanca awardee. Mga ganun eh. And I found that really fascinating. So, AI is the enemy of credentials? Sabi ko, how is that? I haven't figured this out. I haven't figured this out yet. I'm trying to understand it. In some ways, I feel that it's because credentials are a form of validation of a person. Kaya nga, kahit anong webinar na i-conduct ko, the first question I always get is, may certificate po ba dito? Which I say, depende. Kung willing ka magbayad, bigyan ka ng certificate. So parang ganun. But more importantly, AI has that effect eh. Parang, or technology maybe, parang breaking down that silo na, okay, yan ba yung pinagyayabang mo? I can do that with a snap, no? With a prompt. And that's why prompt engineering, which we can talk about some other time, is not picking up as much as I thought it would. In fact, some of the people I met are against it because they say, that's a temporary thing. Eventually, AI will not need that anymore. Can you believe that? Sabi ko, yeah, so are you willing to just stay and wait until that happens? Don't you want to use AI to
Yeah.
maximize your productivity? Something like that. It's so weird. It's bizarre. Kasi I'm doing well on my own, no? I have all of these certificates or these diplomas. And people are also shocked when I say, you know what, a real credential is something you never pay for. Well, I don't pay for credentials. Why? Did you pay for your tuition fee in school? So technically, you earned that diploma and paid for it. That's paid credential, my friend. So whereas the devs doesn't matter. I just have a portfolio. Here's the websites I've done. I don't even need to be a college graduate. Di ba? Parang ganun eh. I don't know. How do you feel about that? Is that something that you're encountering on the field, or is there another explanation that you can offer up?
Yeah, actually, I kind of relate actually, because well, to be honest, I'm actually a dropout.
Okay.
So
So
I
you're now
kind
a
of get
legend. Level
what
up na.
like people think about. No, I mean, like I really understood like when people see that, even I, for example, like me, like a dropout in physics, I cannot go to like masters because I guess that's a really primary like requirement for that. But when I go to IT, it doesn't matter because they don't even care if you're physics. Sometimes people think I'm a computer science student or like I that my background is not there, but they don't really think about the background, what they need to like the output that you can do, like if you can build a machine learning model, because again when you build machine learning model, it doesn't need like to have, you need like a certificate where it shows you can build one. Just really like build something out from anything. So basically, I think there's like a really huge gap in terms of how people would accept AI, like specifically like the lawyers and the medical doctors or and so on, which is really understandable because they feel like they've studied a long years and then the AI just doing it using the prompt, right? So I think that there's like opposition, but eventually I guess some companies right now in the startup world that uses that in medical healthcare and so on, or telehealth, they're actually now adapting AI, but not like some point that they'd eventually like oppose it. But I guess that's like different coins at the time. So yeah.
Yeah, I think yeah, yeah, it's something that it's not bothering me too much, but it's a weird thing because I think it's really the core issue of any industrial revolution. I'm sure you I love talking about history kasi in some of my talks. And there are jobs that don't exist anymore. Totoo yun, no? There are far more jobs that do exist because of technology. But everyone's worried about jobs that could be lost. Like, does anyone actually complain about encyclopedia salesmen not being able to sell encyclopedias anymore? Parang, or what is an encyclopedia? No, you might be too young to remember what an
Yeah,
encyclopedia
yeah.
is.
I didn't
So,
read much of it.
pang wall decoration na lang siya by the time in your age, no? Pero back in the day, that was the internet for me, for people when I was your age. Let's look at Britannica or Grolier or Encarta, see what they think. Ngayon, that's the internet. And back in the day, it was hard to imagine. Kasi dati, wala pa yan sa 1991 edition. Antayin natin yung 1995, baka ma-update na siya. And ngayon, real time, Wikipedia gets edited anytime, any hour. Nag-aaway pa nga yung mga
Yeah,
editors eh.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
that for me is very humbling eh. Kasi parang it doesn't matter what you know or you think you know. It's outdated by now because there are new stuff. Ang tanong na lang is how far of a time lag you need to wait before you update your knowledge. And then even the idea of research, because I've done a bit of research myself and publications. Only dati that was the dream, no? When I finally got out of corporate, did my startup. Sabi ko, that's why I call my company Zerolytics Research. Eh. Sabi ko, I'm gonna do research. And then only to find out na it's all politics pala, research. It's actually surprising how much knowledge gets actually published if it has to go through academic politics, university politics, pati journal politics. And then that's not to say the politics works. Like kunyari, I'm sure you are you aware of ano? I'm sure you're aware of Nature, no? That's the most one of the most powerful journals. Ang dami mga papers on Nature that are actually wrong na they get retracted. Sabi ko, wow, despite all of that political stuff, may nakakalusot pa rin ng mga scammy papers, 'di ba? And then on the flip side, most of the cutting edge state of the art stuff isn't even on journals. It's on a preprint, ng mga archive, ng mga ganyan. SSRN, ResearchGate. Pero people say naman, but it's not been peer reviewed, no? Yeah, but whether you review something or not doesn't necessarily detract from the value of the knowledge. In fact, peer review is very political. And that's what academic careers are based on, no? PhDs are based on that, no? So that's very mind-blowing na yan yung method natin for generating innovation. And then
Yeah,
on,
yeah.
'di ba? Pero in a startup, no one cares about peer review, it's tested in production or do a beta, do an alpha, do a beta. If the market doesn't agree, then do something else. I
Yeah,
think that's
yeah,
I think that's a
definitely.
better way of innovating, 'di ba?
Agree, agree. I mean, in the startup world, there's no like you have to be good at research for you like build a product. It's not like that. Like as long as you have a problem that you want to solve, then build from there. Because when you do research, you kind of like test a certain thing wherein you just compete what's before and do something like better than it. But in the product sense, it's really like solving something that people might actually use because they need it. So I guess that's something really different. Like yeah, I agree that you have to really like build first a product and then test it to the market. If you don't like it, then you have to do it again.
Yeah.
And it's very like iterative process wherein yeah, it's really evolving. That's why I don't think, when you go to startups, you can't have the mindset of not adapting as fast as you can. Because
Yeah.
if you're not thinking that way, then you're gonna be left behind as a founder. Like that's why there's traditional founders right now that doesn't want to use technology because they feel like it's like it's the opposition against innovation.
Yeah, I find that interesting. And considering that especially sa AI, some of the most cutting edge research actually being done in private sector. It's being done in startups, not necessarily in academia. In fact, they formed the startup because they couldn't get it through academia. And kaya nga I wish we had time for this, no? Maybe in another chat. the state of the education system, especially in the Philippines, something we need to figure out. I feel na it's inevitable. It's probably on its way down to collapse. Ang tanong na lang is, will there be more young minds like yourself who figured it out na ayoko na, I'll quit this, I'm quitting this system. As long as you can speak and count, siguro, PISA results, hello. Beyond that, ano na eh, it's all about experiential learning na eh. If you can get that elsewhere, you don't have to pay tuition fee. Iba yung tuition fee mo sa labas. It's more emotional tuition fee, I guess. Opportunity tuition fee.
Yes. Yeah.
'Di ba? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, sige, we're nearly at the hour. So we have about 10, 11 minutes left. Unfortunately, these conversations never last long enough, but certainly there'll be an episode, another episode for us now. Can you talk a bit about, okay, where you are now? What lessons would you give Amy Obinguar? Mga advice you would give her years ago? No, it hasn't been that long to be honest, but at least kahit papaano, you've gone through several cycles now and you're in another cycle now. Um, and maybe by proxy, advice to other people who might be wondering the same thing you were wondering when they were your age. Uh, na is there another way? Kasi I feel that lalo na Gen Z and soon Gen Alpha, they're still being brainwashed and indoctrinated by a very outdated system, the system that produced people like me, no, that had to wait several decades before I figured it out. No? So ikaw, anong ano mo? Anong mga lessons na you would give them or advice that you would give them?
Yeah, I guess some people might not have like the appetite to like make mistakes or like, like see that you might need to like do risk taking decisions to like, do something that might really like, I guess, amazing for you. But I guess one thing that I would really say is like you have to really like listen to yourself, because sometimes people are like just following what's in there
Mm-hmm.
instead of like thinking about what you want like yourself. Like for me, when I was like trying to leave now, like left the corporate, I was always like thinking like I can't sleep without knowing that I want to do something else. Like when you want to do something, it's sometimes hard for you to sleep at night without thinking like maybe this is something that you need to do. And then from there you just grab it. So yeah, if failures and mistakes are part of the life of founders, there was no like easy as success in startups, because there was no like like do this and then you get this like Zuckerberg type of wealth and later on. But I guess it's something that you have to listen to yourself first, and then act on it if you can. You can probably like oppose it, but somehow eventually you realize that it always goes you to that next step. Because when I was trying to avoid that positions that was offering like CTO and all, at some point I realized that it was like was like the next step. Like I was just trying to like stop myself from accepting it. But then eventually that it led me to like eventually like, embracing it. And then from there, yeah, there's a lot of learning. So I guess that's something that I probably, give advice to people. You know, and eventually like you have to have that mindset that you need to adapt as fast as you can. In the corporate, we're very much more stable. We're much more like we not we don't need to like adapt as fast as how startups think. But now in startups, you have to think that you need to listen to the users whenever you're developing something, because I guess that's something that we feel like it's important when you like do business. You have to adapt to what people are, because it's changing. Like how we use now TikTok might not be like similar to how we use YouTube before. So I guess that's something, especially in the content creation. Um, it's better to have like, shorter vids, like being a chat for, and then from there you posted it a lot, like, every week, because it helps a lot, people to see the so I guess that's something. You go yourself out there and then yeah, just enjoy the the journey, because there's a lot of emotional strides whenever you go to there. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's really good stuff. No, maybe that's one thing that in many ways I envy your generation. Kasi when I was coming out of school, wala namang social media eh. So although you could do what people are doing now, but the avenues were more limited. There was only mass media. So kaya nauso yung PBB eh. That's your claim to fame, no? And that's an organized parang structure by a network. So there were very few opportunities to get out there. Pero now it's literally a click away. Record something, post it, and then talk.
Yes.
And then ang laban na lang is finding a niche. Kasi you'll never be able to compete with everyone if you try to. Pero if you can reach an audience that likes what you're talking about, then maybe they'll stick around. No? Okay. Sige, we still have a few more minutes. What's ahead for you? So you've gone through an interesting transition recently, and which is the latest in many transitions pala na
Yes.
from leaving school to corporate ngayon. So where do you see yourself coming? Parang interview question. No? What do you see for yourself in the next few years?
Well, actually, I actually don't know yet, but I feel like I'm really more into like doing what things that is at hand in the present time. So like for me, really like exploring the the startup because I feel like that's where I wanted to go like next. And then eventually like explore different industries from there, and then just grow, and eventually like I know the market will eventually like change, so maybe like startup is not my thing in the next decade, probably another thing. But I guess it's more like I'm good to go when there's like a new cycle to go, or like any transitions. I guess I'm really more open to like going to different transitions, although I guess every transition has a different, experiences. I mean, when I got the layoff, I experienced what people felt about, um when you have the job and then eventually the next day don't have the job, because it's really startup world. So I guess that's something you can expect when you go to there, that it wasn't easy. It's gonna be emotional roller coaster on the side.
Yeah, at saka in many ways, the way you're relating the issue now, it's still that default position of people to find a job, no? And yeah, certainly that's very that's an honorable thing. Pero ako kasi I don't look for jobs as much as I look for avenues to contribute or experiences to, 'di ba?
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
job is well, a job is a parang a project for me. Kaya nga
Yeah.
baka the maybe the big divide between people who are in a job and people who are doing stuff is you get to dictate, or would you like to dictate where you get the jobs? Kasi some people find it more convenient to just sign a contract and I'll just click it, check in 9 to 5, brave the traffic in the morning, brave the traffic in the evening, or telecommute. It's still very predictable. Kaya, and then in your case, suddenly it stopped. Parang, okay, you're out. Then you feel lost. I felt lost before also, and I was in between. Oh, and actually, funny enough, I felt lost when I was in a job. This is probably a story for another time. No? Kasi I felt I couldn't leave for some reason. No? I couldn't leave. Parang takot ako to venture out. And then finally, I was kind of forced to do it. And then I realized, ganun lang pala yun. And then eventually, it got me finally out of the corporate existence, only to find out na, ang lawak pala. There's a broader playing field. It's got its own rules. It's got its own
Yes.
challenges. And then part of those challenges is dealing with people who want a job. So you're now on the
Yeah.
other,
Agree.
now
Agree.
you're on the other side of the fence now, and you have to talk to them. No? And yeah, funny enough. Anyway, sige.
Yeah. I.
So I would love to have you for another chat, but thanks a lot, Amy, for giving us time
Thank you
today.
so much.
Yeah. So by the time this thing airs, it's probably going to be after Christmas. So belated Merry Christmas to everyone and advance Happy New
Yeah.
Year.
Merry Christmas also to everyone. Thank you so much for this invitation also.
Yeah. See you again soon.